Formula One has always been the pinnacle of speed, precision, and danger, a sport where drivers push the limits of human capability and machine performance. But behind the glamour, champagne, and roaring crowds lies a dark truth. The track has claimed countless lives. These are not just accidents. They are tragedies that sent shockwaves through the racing world, forcing Formula One to rethink safety, design, and human endurance. Here are the 5 most horrifying Formula One deaths ever moments that remind us how thin the line between glory and disaster truly is. It was Sunday blue skies over Monza, the roar of engines echoing through the grandstands, and the world's best drivers battling for glory. But on September 10, 1961, the Italian Grand Prix turned into one of the darkest days in Formula One history. At the heart of it was Wolfgang von Trips, a German aristocrat, a count by birth, and a rising star behind the wheel of Ferrari's Scarlet Machine. Fans called him Taffy, a name that carried warmth and admiration. He was leading the World Championship, poised to make history. But fate had something else in store. On the second lap, Von Trips and Jim Clark raced side by side down Monza's long straight, 2 men chasing immortality at over 200 km/h. Then, in a split second, everything went wrong. The 2 cars made contact with Clark's front wheel, clipped Von Trips's rear. The Ferrari jolted violently, lifted into the air like a missile, and then horror. It vaulted over the barrier and into the crowd. The scream of the engine was replaced by chaos, metal twisting, people running, and silence falling over the grandstands that just moments before had been cheering. Von Trips never made it to the hospital. He was gone instantly, thrown from the wreck. 15 spectators were also killed, men, women, even children, standing too close to the dream that had suddenly turned into a nightmare. The scene was indescribable. In a sport where danger was always part of the thrill, this was something else, a tragedy that shattered the illusion of safety for both drivers and fans alike. That day changed Formula One forever. It forced the world to confront a question no one wanted to ask. What happens when speed, ambition, and human error collide head-on? The aftermath was grim. Ferrari withdrew from the rest of the season, despite already securing the Constructors' Championship. Von Trips, who had been leading the title race, was posthumously declared runner-up, losing by just 1 point to his teammate Phil Hill. He had been more than just a driver. He was a pioneer who brought nobility to the cockpit. Born into a Rhineland noble family, Von Trips grew up in a castle in Kerpen, near Cologne. He struggled with diabetes, often carrying high-sugar snacks in his car to fight off low blood sugar during races. But nothing stopped him. From his first podiums in the late 1950s to his hard-fought victories at Zandvoort and Silverstone in 1961, he had climbed his way to the top of the motorsport world. Behind the polished smile and refined manner, there was a man obsessed with racing, willing to risk everything for the pursuit of speed. And yet, it was that same passion that claimed him. The sight of his car soaring off the track, the screams from the stands, and the eerie silence that followed still haunt Formula One's collective memory. The FIA soon banned races on circuits with steeply banked corners. Safety barriers, spectator zones, and car designs were all re-examined. But for many, the scars of that day never truly healed. In a cruel twist of fate, Von Trips had built a karting track in his hometown of Kerpen just before his death, the same track where, decades later, Michael Schumacher would begin his journey to becoming one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time. It's as if Von Trips's spirit lingered there, guiding another German prodigy to fulfill the destiny he never could. The 1967 Monaco Grand Prix was meant to be a celebration of speed and elegance, the glamour of the French Riviera, meeting the thrill of Formula One. The streets of Monte Carlo shimmered under the Mediterranean sun as engines roared between yachts and cheering spectators. But that afternoon, beauty turned to horror in an instant. Behind the wheel of his scarlet Ferrari was Lorenzo Bandini, adored in Italy, respected across the racing world, and known for his humility despite the fame that came with driving for Enzo Ferrari. He had come so close to greatness before, and many believed this would be his day. For 82 laps, Bandini chased Denny Hume's Brabham, pushing harder than ever. His car skimmed the barriers with each turn, the crowd holding its breath. Then, as he entered the harbor chicane, one of Monaco's most treacherous corners, fate struck. His Ferrari's rear left wheel clipped the guardrail, sending the car into a pole before flipping into a wall of straw bales. The impact was violent, and then came the fire. In moments, Monte Carlo vanished beneath a plume of thick, black smoke. The red Ferrari became a fireball. Marshals rushed in with extinguishers, but the flames were relentlessly feeding on leaking fuel and ignited straw. Bandini was trapped beneath the wreckage, motionless, as the heat grew unbearable. Spectators screamed from balconies and yachts, helpless as the inferno consumed everything. Over a minute passed before rescuers could reach him. The straw bales, meant for safety, had become a death trap. When Bandini was finally pulled out, it was too late. His body was covered in third-degree burns, his chest crushed, his face unrecognizable. He was rushed to Princess Grace Hospital, where doctors fought desperately for 3 days. On May 10, 1967, Lorenzo Bandini was gone. He was just 31. The image of his Ferrari burning beneath the Monaco sun remains one of the most haunting in F1 history. Flames reflecting off the blue harbor, panic echoing through the narrow streets. The horror wasn't just in the crash, but in the helplessness of watching a man consumed by the dream he lived for. Bandini's rise made it even more tragic. Born in Libya and raised in Florence, he had started as a mechanic's apprentice before working his way to Formula One. He'd once fixed cars in a Milan garage before earning his first podium in Monaco, the very same place that would take his life. By 1967, he was Ferrari's top driver, a national hero, and a world champion in the making. But fate, cruel as ever, intervened. His death shook the sport. The horrifying images from Monaco led to swift change. Straw bales were banned, marshals were better trained, and new safety barriers were introduced. Bandini's sacrifice forced Formula One to confront its dangers and evolve. More than 100,000 people attended his funeral in Reggiolo, many in tears as his coffin passed draped in Ferrari red. Enzo Ferrari was devastated that the man who brought so much pride to his team had perished in its service. What makes Bandini's death unforgettable isn't just the flames or the crash, but the cruel irony that he had once helped film a movie, Grand Prix, suggesting that very harbor chicane for a crash scene, unaware it would become his own. The 1970 Formula One season was supposed to be Jochen Rindt's crowning moment, a year that would finally cement his place among the legends. The Austrian driver had been unstoppable, winning race after race with fearless precision. His Lotus 72, sleek and revolutionary, seemed untouchable on the track. Fans adored him for his bold driving style, his calm confidence, and his ability to find speed where no one else could. Heading into the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, Rindt was on the verge of becoming world champion. No one could have imagined that it would be his final race weekend. During practice on September 5, 1970, tragedy struck. Rindt's Lotus hurtled down Monza's long straight at over 200 miles per hour, when suddenly, without warning, the car veered left. The front brake shaft had failed. The Lotus slammed into a poorly installed guardrail, tearing apart on impact. The nose of the car was crushed, the cockpit twisted, and Rindt was thrown forward violently despite being strapped in. His seatbelt, fitted in a way that allowed him to move more freely, a common practice among drivers, then slid up his body during the crash. The harness caught his neck instead of his chest, inflicting fatal injuries. The rescue teams rushed to the scene, but there was nothing they could do. Jochen Rindt was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. He was just 28 years old. The news spread like wildfire. Shock rippled through the paddock, the grandstands, and across Europe. Everyone knew Rindt had been destined for greatness, and now that promise was gone in an instant. His wife, Nina, stood silently in the pit lane, watching the car being brought back, her face pale with disbelief. But the cruelest twist came weeks later. Despite his death, Rindt's championship lead was so commanding that no one could surpass his points total. When the season ended, he was officially declared the 1970 Formula One world champion, the only driver in history to win the title posthumously. His name was engraved on the trophy, his legacy immortalized, but the victory felt hollow, shadowed by grief. Rindt's death exposed the dangers that drivers had long accepted as part of the job: the broken guardrails, the lack of runoff areas, the fragile cars that all came under fire. His passing forced Formula One to face its negligence. In the aftermath, major safety reforms followed: better crash barriers, stricter harness designs, and improved car construction standards. Jochen Rindt's story is one of brilliance cut short by a man who chased perfection and paid the ultimate price. Every corner of Monza still whispers his name, a chilling reminder that even champions aren't immune to the dangers that lurk behind the pursuit of speed. It was supposed to be just another race weekend, a blur of speed, glory, and noise echoing through the hills of Imola. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix had drawn thousands under the Italian sun, all waiting to see one man, Ayrton Senna da Silva, the Brazilian genius, the three-time world champion, and the very soul of Formula One. For millions, Senna wasn't just a driver. He was a symbol of courage and perfection, a man who danced on the edge of danger. But that Sunday, May 1st, became the darkest day in Formula One history. The day the sport's heart stopped beating. The weekend had already felt cursed. On Friday, Senna's close friend Rubens Barrichello crashed at 225 km/h, his car flipping violently. Senna ran to the medical center and waited outside until Barrichello regained consciousness. A rare moment of relief in a weekend filled with dread. But the next day brought tragedy. During Saturday qualifying, Roland Ratzenberger, a rookie Austrian driver, struck a wall at over 300 km/h after his front wing failed. The impact killed him instantly. When Sid Watkins, F1's top doctor, told Senna the news, the champion's eyes filled with tears. Watkins urged him to quit, to go fishing instead. But Senna quietly replied, "I can't stop. Racing was his life." That night, he called his girlfriend, Adrienne Gallistou, and broke down. He spoke of the fear, the crashes, the feeling that something terrible was coming. Still, on Sunday morning, he showed up determined. Over breakfast, he even made peace with his old rival Alain Prost, talking about reviving the Drivers' Association to improve safety, as if sensing what was ahead. At the start of the race, chaos struck. JJ Leto stalled on the grid, and Pedro Lamy crashed into him, sending debris into the stands. The safety car came out, but it was too slow. Senna's tires began cooling, losing grip. After 5 laps, the race restarted. On lap 7, the blue and white Williams flew through Tamburello, Imola's fastest corner. Then, disaster struck. At 309 km/h, Senna's steering column suddenly snapped. His car veered off track, skidding across the grass before slamming into a concrete wall at 211 km/h. The impact was brutal. The front wheel tore free, the suspension exploded, and a suspension arm pierced his helmet above the right eye. For a few seconds, the world held its breath. Millions watching live hoped he'd climb out, but he didn't move. Sid Watkins arrived within moments. When I lifted his eyelids, he later said, it was clear he had a massive brain injury. As we lifted him from the car, he sighed, and I felt his spirit depart. Senna was airlifted to Bologna's Maggiore Hospital, but at 6:37 p.m. he was pronounced dead. He was just 34. Inside his wrecked car, officials found a folded Austrian flag Senna had planned to raise at the finish line to honor Ratzenberger, who had died the day before. It was a heartbreaking final gesture from a man who carried others' pain as deeply as his own. In Brazil, millions poured into the streets. His coffin, draped in the national flag, moved through Sao Paulo as the city fell silent. Even those who never followed racing felt the loss because Senna was more than a driver. He embodied passion, faith, and humanity in a sport built on danger. His death changed Formula One forever. The FIA immediately launched sweeping safety reforms: stronger cockpits, improved crash barriers, faster medical response, and redesigned circuits. For 2 decades after Senna's death, no driver was killed during a Formula One race. Imola was never the same. The Tamburello corner was reshaped into a chicane, with a scar left where the greatest of them all took his final breath. It was supposed to be a quiet morning at the Paul Ricard circuit. No crowds, no cameras, just the sound of engines echoing across the French hills. For Elio de Angelis, it was another test session, another chance to find the edge between control and chaos. The Italian driver, often called Formula One's last gentleman racer, was known for his calm smile, his piano playing, and his ability to bring grace to a sport built on danger. But on May 14, 1986, that grace met tragedy in one of the most horrifying and heartbreaking moments Formula One had ever seen. De Angelis had joined Brabham that season, stepping into the seat once held by Nelson Piquet. The car he was testing, the radical BT55, was a marvel on paper. Impossibly low, sleek, designed by the brilliant Gordon Murray to cheat the wind. But brilliance can be a gamble. The car's tilted BMW engine caused constant mechanical issues, and that morning it would betray him completely. As Elio pushed the car down the long Maestral Straight, the speed climbed past 300 km/h. Then, without warning, the rear wing snapped clean off. In an instant, the car lost all downforce the rear lifted, and the Brabham became an airborne missile. Witnesses later described it as a blur of white and blue, cartwheeling violently across the tarmac before slamming into the barriers and bursting into flames. The impact didn't kill him. That was the cruelest part. De Angelis was still alive, trapped inside the wreckage, his body pinned, the fire growing hotter by the second. He struggled to escape, but the cockpit was crushed. Smoke filled the air, thick and suffocating, and there were no marshals nearby, no one to help him. The test session had been minimally staffed, as was common at the time. By the time someone reached the wreck, precious minutes had already slipped away. The fire spread uncontrollably, and the rescuers had no proper extinguishers, no cutting tools, no urgency protocol. De Angelis was forced to wait 30 agonizing minutes for a medical helicopter to arrive. By then, the damage was irreversible. He had suffered only a broken collarbone and minor burns, but the smoke had done what the crash could not. He was airlifted to a hospital in Marseille, where he fought for his life for nearly 29 hours before succumbing to smoke inhalation. He was just 28 years old. The news devastated the paddock. Elio wasn't just another driver. He was deeply loved. He was known for his humility, his kindness, and the rare calm he brought to an intense world. This was a man who would sit down at a grand piano after a race and play Chopin for his teammates. He had once kept fellow drivers entertained during a strike in South Africa, filling a locked hotel with the sound of Mozart while they protested FIA's rules. To his friends, he wasn't just a racer, he was the heart of the grid. His death struck a nerve deeper than most. It wasn't the speed that killed him, or the danger that everyone in the sport accepted. It was the failure of rescue, the silence, the delay. He didn't die from impact. He died waiting for help that came too late. That truth haunted Formula One. The FIA could no longer ignore the gaps in safety during private tests. After Elio's death, emergency standards were redefined. Medical teams had to be on site during all official testing. Marshals better trained. Helicopters ready within minutes. Circuits reevaluated their designs. Paul Ricard itself was permanently shortened. The very section where Elio crashed was removed from future races, as if the circuit itself couldn't bear to repeat the past. His seat at Brabham was later taken by Derek Warwick, one of the few drivers who hadn't immediately called the team looking to replace him after the tragedy. That gesture alone spoke volumes about the type of man De Angelis was, someone even his rivals respected too much to replace overnight. Elio's closest friend, Keke Rosberg, was shattered by the loss. The two had shared laughter, meals, and late-night talks about racing and life. At the end of that season, Rosberg quietly retired. After Elio, he said later, "It didn't feel the same anymore.